tonight, returning author Jerry Thornton, the best-selling author of From Darkness to Dynasty, is back with his new book, Five Rings, the Super Bowl History of the New England Patriots So Far. Well, we know they've won another championship, so 6 rings. Our beloved Patriots have actually won 6 since the championship started in 2001. So Jerry's here to discuss this amazing football team, the ups and downs, strategies, and a whole lot more. Please join me in welcoming the #1 Patriots fan, Mr. Jerry Thornton.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And a round of applause for yourselves for coming out tonight on a Friday night. I really deeply appreciate it. Thank you. First of all, thanks very much for that introduction. Second, just by quick word here, the reason I'm dressed like a waiter at Burton's in Hingham is not because I dressed fancier. I'm coming from some formal meeting. It said, when this is done, I'm going to a Halloween party. And my wife and I are going as Uma Thurman and Travolta from Pulp Fiction. So I got to go home and throw on a bowler tie and put a gun on my belt, and that's it. So thanks very much. And yeah, in the intro that Ms. Cafardo mentioned, yeah, I cover sports. I cover the Patriots for Barstool Sports. If you're not reading it, trust me, your kids or your grandkids are. Prior to that, I was at WEEI Sports Radio. I was doing the afternoon show there for a couple of years, which is a great opportunity, but Barstool offered a better opportunity for a national forum and so on. And when I was at EEI, I loved doing it. I loved sitting there every day for 4 hours talking about sports, because I do it anyway, and so there might as well be a microphone in front of me. But I got to do other things too. I wrote for their website. I used to go places and shoot videos for the website. I had a podcast, which I love to do, because I've been doing stand-up for 29 years now. Don't let the fact that you've never heard of me distract you from that. I mean, last night I was working at Castle Island Brewery Comedy Show in Norwood, so my career is skyrocketing to the moon. So glad I turned down Jimmy Kimmel so that I could do that. But anyway, and when I would do my own podcast on EEI, it was fun to talk about non-sports things that I'm interested in. So I had other comics that were on. I had some sitcom stars. I had on guys who were on reality shows. I had a guy who won Survivor one time on my show, which was cool. I had on the Amazing Kreskin. The Amazing Kreskin, a guy who's been in show business for 65 years, who was on The Tonight Show before Johnny Carson was on The Tonight Show, and that was great. And sometimes I had book authors. And anytime I would have a book author, I'd start the conversation the same way. Welcome to the show. Okay, why? Why'd you write a book? Because nobody writes a book just for the money. I mean, yes, you get fame and glory and adulation. Yes, women throw themselves at me, men want to be me. That's my reality. Every day a dump truck filled with gold bars for the book royalty shows up to my driveway. That's my, no. But it's a lonely work. It's a lot of work. Why do you do it? I'm going to ask and answer that question. Why I wrote Five Rings. Thank you, by the way, Patriots, for making this thing like have an irrelevant title. In fact, talk about a first world problem. You know, this thing came out about a year ago. It's perfectly relevant. And then, as my publisher said, it's like the Laserdisc. Like 5 months after it came out, it has we've got to replace it. We're working on that. But the reason I wrote this and the first book, From Darkness to Dynasty, is, frankly, I always wanted to read these books. And I waited, and the universe was taking its sweet time getting around to doing it, so I said, to heck with it, I'll jump on that grenade, and I'll be the one to tell these stories, because what we've witnessed with the Patriots, and this is in this current era, which Five Rings covers, but also the previous era, is unprecedented. Like, not just in American sports, but in American life. There is nothing in pop culture that equates to what we've witnessed to this. And I think, like, we get up in the day-to-day and we think about next game or this story or this controversy or whatever, and forget sometimes to pull back and look at the big picture and say, this is an incredible, incredible story. So the first book starts off with, their inception. It's about me growing up as a Patriots fan during the time when they were not just bad, like everyone has the right to be bad, they were laughing stocks. They were embarrassments off the field. They got more attention in like the the business section for being broke all the time, or the true crime section of the paper. Then they did the sports page because they always had guys who were getting arrested and fans that were out of control. And weirdly, that was the team that I most fell in love with. So I grew up in Weymouth, so talk slow. I'm the youngest of 5, and we were a Patriots first household during a time when nobody was a Patriots first household. Like when I was a kid, the Bruins drafted Bobby Orr. If there was a skating rink within 30 miles of your house, it's because Bobby Orr came to the Bruins. The Celtics drafted Larry Bird when I was in high school and rebooted the dynasty, and they were the biggest story in the country. The Red Sox were always front and center. And back then, saying that you were a Patriots fan first was like someone saying, who's your favorite one of the Three Stooges? And you say, I really like Shemp. Thank you. Shemp is a nightmare. I appreciate that. I know there's some women in the room going, Three Stooges? What are those? Is that thing my husband laughs at? Yes, we did. But anyway, the Patriots were our Shemp. They were weirdly like this stray dog that followed me home from school, and it had 2 different colored eyes and missing a leg and no tail that I fell in love with, and my parents let me keep it, I guess. That book is kind of autobiographical. It talks about, before I was born, how they bought this team. Billy Sullivan was the first owner. He joined the American Football League, which is now the American Football Conference. It joined the league in 1970. But prior to that, it was just a startup league with 7 millionaires who needed an 8th guy to put a team in Boston. And they got this guy, Billy Sullivan, in 1960, who his qualifications to get in there was he and his wife had put away $25,000 to buy a house down the Cape. I'm not kidding you. That's how he got in a room filled with like oil magnates and business tycoons and and guys who own like hotel chains or whatever. And so he got a piece of paper that said, you own a football team in a league that doesn't exist. You don't have any players. You don't have a coach. You don't have a general manager. He didn't even have a stadium. And so my friend Penelope here was at the very first game that they ever had, right, in 1960. It was at Boston University. Then they moved on to Boston College. They played in Harvard. They were at Fenway Park for a while, which was a uniquely terrible place to have a football game. Like, they played college there once in a while, and the layout is just awful. Like, people couldn't see. The people that should have had the good seats couldn't even see the field because the players were standing in their way. So their solution was to put both benches on the other side of the field. See if you can see the flaw in that design, right? They took 2 football teams and put them on the same side of the sidelines and just said, okay, but don't talk to each other, right? It was like 2 little kids fighting in the back of a car. You just go, invisible line down the middle. You stay on your side. And of course they didn't. They just routinely walked over into the other team's sidelines and said, they're talking about running the ball more. That was the Patriots of my youth. So when they finally got a stadium, it was the one down in Foxborough, and I remember my first ever sporting event I ever went to was there. And I think like most of us, right, your first sporting event is Fenway Park, right? Your parents will take you, dad usually would take you to like Fenway, and it's relaxing and it's a beautiful day or whatever. My dad passed away when I was little, so that wasn't in the cards for me. So it was my older brothers taking me to the old stadium at Foxborough, and I vividly remember walking up there. God, it was like one of the moments of my life that I'll never forget, the feeling of walking up that ramp and being able to look out on this field and saying, I'm going to see a real football stadium. I mean, God, like I watch on Sundays, like the Steelers play and the Cowboys and the 49ers. And I walked up that ramp, and I swear to you, I looked around and I said, I'm just a little kid here, but even I know that this place is a dump. Right? It was like this concrete toilet seat cover, right? It was like, it was like I had seen Brockton High School. It was a worse stadium than Brockton High School plays in. And you remember what it was called when it first opened? Schaefer Stadium. Now, by way of like background, everybody sells what we call the naming rights to the stadium now. Gillette spent like, I think, $30 million to have the new place named after them. Nobody did it then. Like, if you built a civic institution like that, you gave it a name. You gave it like a name that was express your ideals, right? Like Soldier Field in Chicago, or War Memorial Coliseum, Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. They not only sold the naming rights, they sold it to a beer, and not just any beer. Schaefer was the worst swill that has ever been brewed and put into cans.
My first beer, Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah, and
No more, though.
yeah, exactly. No, when everyone's bringing back all these, like, hipster beers, like, Pabst Blue Ribbon was gone, it's back. Narragansett is huge now. No one's asking for Schaefer, right? And okay, do you remember their slogan was, Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one. Right? Take a gander at that through 2019 sensibilities for one hot second, right? Try putting that past Mothers Against Drunk Driving, right? Like, yeah, this stuff is really toilet water, but if you drink enough of it, kids, you won't know the difference. And so it's that, there's a million stories like that. There's the time when they actually made it to the playoffs and the fans stormed the field and they tore down the goalpost, which, okay, a harmless prank, but even then no one was doing it. It was like 30 years since anyone had done it. But there's that old expression, act like you've been there before. Patriots fans hadn't been there before. They didn't know how to act. They were like the Jets are today, like nobody knew how to win. So they didn't just tear these things down and drop them and go. Typical of Pats fans of the era, they picked the things up and carried them off the field and up the ramp and down the hill and went across the parking lot and started carrying the goalposts up Route 1. Now, what the end game was, nobody knows. Like, whether someone's going to put in their driveway, they were going to take turns with it, I don't know. Because what happened is Route 1 then was like Route 1 is today, right? It was, liquor stores and parking lots and like used storage facilities and low-hanging high-tension wires. So these morons found out what happens when thin-walled steel hits a high-tension wire, and they got electrocuted. Now, 2 of them got badly burned and later sued the team and the town and their insurance companies and won millions of dollars in court. Right. Now, I don't know what part of them got affected, but I like to think that it was their reproductive system so that they wouldn't have stupid kids like themselves. Now, I mentioned that in the first book, and I got an angry email from a woman saying, you called those men stupid. Well, let me tell you something. One of them was my husband. This is true. And he wasn't even carrying those goalposts. He was just walking up the street, minding his own business. Like, right, yeah. I took a little bit of electronics in school, and the same science we all did. And I know enough about electricity to know that it doesn't skip the man who's holding on to the steel and jump across the street and hit some innocent bystander who just was out for a casual stroll with 40,000 idiots on the end of a game. So yeah, that was one I thought maybe I'll just email her back and say, darling, what your husband told you is what I would tell my wife if I did something really egregiously stupid and made $1 million. But I just thought, well, enough alone. So, anyway, that first book, again, it's called Darkness to Dynasty, and you probably shouldn't give away the ending, but sometimes you can, right? I mean, who saw Titanic, right? You saw that coming a mile away, right? It's right there in the title. Yeah. True story as an aside, my brother saw Titanic in a theater in front of a 16-year-old girl who cried at the end. She goes, I didn't know that the boat sinks. Like, do we blame the schools or what? No. But anyway, yeah, it was right there. And sometimes you put the ending right in the title, Finding Nemo. Spoiler alert, they find Nemo at the end. So yeah, Darkness of Dynasty ends pretty much where Five Rings begins, which is that 2001 season when they first won that Super Bowl. And it was such a seismic shift in the culture, what it did for all of Boston sports. People forget now, the 15 years before that, so I'm talking from the 1986 Celtics to the 2001 Patriots, not only had no Boston team won a title, they'd only got to the finals like I think 4 times. We were officially calling the town Loserville. Like, there were major league players putting in their contract that couldn't be sent to the Red Sox. We were hated, but like there was no reason to like our teams. They had idiots like Rick Pitino running the Celtics or whatever. And it all changed with that 2001 Patriots. And I kind of feel like we look back at that team now and say, oh, you know, that was their time. That's when they arrived. No, it was such a miracle that I don't think we fully appreciate how many things had to fall exactly into place the way they did for that team. Big things, little things, huge historic events, all sort of fell exactly into place for them. So I won't get into the nuts and bolts, but a few examples. They went 11-5 that year, and because they went 11-5, they got a week off in the playoffs and a home game. In order to win 11 games, they had to win, you know, some really close ones. One of them, and this is my favorite, I talk about a little thing. They're in overtime against Buffalo, and David Patton, the receiver, catches a pass, gets hit, fumbles, he gets knocked unconscious, Buffalo recovers, they're about to win the game. Well, the officials review the play and see that while he was laying on the ground unconscious, his head was out of bounds and his ankle was touching the ball. By rule, dead ball, Patriots hang on to possession, they go down, kick a game-winning field goal. A big thing that happened, and I haven't mentioned this name, but it's coming up here now. They have a game against the Jets. Drew Bledsoe, the highest paid player in NFL history at that point, goes rolling out, gets hit by Mo Lewis of the Jets on the sidelines, clean hit and everything. We didn't know it at the time, but he almost died from it. He went back to the huddle and was talking, and he was 3 plays, but after a while he started talking gibberish, and people like, there's something wrong with him. Like he was bleeding internally. Like his aorta split down lengthwise, I guess laterally they call it. And there's a story about the thoracic surgeon from Mass General was sitting at home watching the game with his wife. He was on call, and he goes, my pager's going to go off. Watch this. They're going to need me to go operate on him. That's exactly what happened, and he saved Bledsoe's life. Well, the guy he was talking gibberish to plays rather largely in the stories I'm about to tell. His backup quarterback, a guy named Tom Brady, came in that moment. Now, if he didn't come in then, maybe he doesn't come in at all, maybe comes in too late in the season to do any good, but he comes in, and this is before we actually understood that he was the Messiah, and he changed the course of football history and my life forever. And it was all because of that. Now, they go through all these things. I mentioned big historic events. 9/11, I don't want to say benefited, that's the wrong word, but it affected them in a way that things worked out for them, because the NFL did the right thing. They canceled the games the next weekend, and because of a weird quirk in the schedule, the Patriots were going to be off the last week of the season. They moved that game to the last week, and they played a team that was Carolina. They were a good team prior to that. By the time they faced the Patriots at the end of the year, they were 1-15. They were the worst team in football. They were about to fire their coach. So it was basically like a week off. Then they got an actual week off, and then they had the Snow Bowl. One of the greatest games. Ironically enough, the last game ever played in the old stadium, and also the best. Now, we call it the Snow Bowl, and the rest of the country calls it the Tuck Rule game. It's like if you go down south and you mention the Civil War, they're going to say, no, we call it the War of Northern Aggression, Yankee. And they played the Oakland Raiders, and boy, talk about things falling into place on a razor's edge. Brady goes back to pass. He takes the ball down. He gets hit. Ball comes loose. They call it a fumble. Oakland recovers. Game over. Game over at that point. There's nothing that the Pats could have done, except the fumble happened just inside the 2-minute warning. And I don't want to get into the arcane rules of the league, but the Patriots couldn't challenge it. It had to be challenged by the officials. Well, the Patriots were out of timeouts, so they couldn't challenge it if they wanted to, but it was 1 58 seconds instead of 2 minutes and 1 second, so the officials automatically reviewed it, and the official went into the hood to look at the replay, and he famously said, and I'll clean it up for this crowd, "Oh, F, we blew this." And he looked at it and said, Patriots retain possession. They go down. Adam Vinatieri kicks the greatest kick in history through a blizzard, and it's good. Quick aside on that, I was talking to a group of people like yourself a couple of years ago, and this older gentleman stood up. He said, I just want to interject here. I said, sure, go ahead. And he said, I was at that game. In fact, I was working that game. He worked on the sidelines holding like the first down markers. And I knew he was legit because he was wearing like 1990s kind of NFL gear, like starter jackets and stuff. And he said when they gave the ball back to the Patriots, and by the way, the Raiders lost their mind about it. And 20 years later, they're still like it still makes their brains explode. It's beautiful to watch. Oh, it's like a Cronenberg film. Like, okay, good, you know. I'll warm myself off of your anger, you dolts. So this guy said that when they gave the ball back to the Patriots, they said, all right, Patriots ball, first, you know, third down. And these guys stopped them and said, wait, it's a fumble. No, you ruled it an incomplete pass, not a fumble. So therefore, it goes back to the line of scrimmage, which was 3 yards up that way. Strike that, it was 5 yards up further up. And the officials say, oh my gosh, you're right. Okay, so they put the ball 5 yards up where it belonged. They got it right. Vinatieri's kick was good by 3 yards. So if these guys hadn't spoken up, if the officials didn't take their word for it, that would have been short. Patriots lose. They don't win the Super Bowl. Maybe they never win a Super Bowl. I said, sir, you're Forrest Gump. Like, you know, what a brush with greatness. You were there in the actual moment. And they go on to win that Super Bowl. Now, talking about 5 rings and just this history, and I'll get through this and let's have some laughs. But when I'm done, I really want to hear from you guys and your questions, your comments. But this whole era has been in like kind of 4 parts to me. There's been what they've done on the field, which is absolutely unprecedented. It's the reaction of the rest of the country to it. It's the way they've tried to stop the Patriots, and then it's kind of what it's done for us. So what they've done on the field. First of all, they've been in 9 Super Bowls in this era. The closest thing to a blowout was the one they won last year, which was 13-3. Every game they've played has been down to a razor-thin margin. Now, Super Bowls were never like that. It was always the worst sporting event of the year, without question, right? How many, if you're old enough to remember, every year it was over before halftime, right? It was just a garbage game where, like, you'd be bored, the Cowboys would be, like, crushing the Bills, and all your friends would be, like, talking during the game, and then shh, quiet, the commercial's on. You know what I mean? Like when the actual game's on, you're like, hey, what's in this dip? It's delicious. And then like, oh, quiet, hey, the Dalmatian's making friends with a Clydesdale or whatever. Well, no, the Patriots have done the unprecedented. They've made the Super Bowl exciting. So there's that one against the Rams. The first Super Bowl ever to end with a score in the final second, where, remember, the Patriots were, the Rams had tied it up. Patriots had the ball with like 1:38 left, and John Madden was famously going, oh, if I'm them, I would just take a knee and play for overtime. Oh, they're making a mistake trying to go for it. Well, the coaches pulled Brady aside, and they said, okay, we're going to give you a shot to go for this. Take care of the ball, be smart, don't do anything, don't take any chances. And he go, okay, sure. And Bledsoe pulled him aside, and to his undying credit said, forget that, just get out there and sling it. And he went out there and he slung it, so he kicks a game-winning field goal. Again, it had never happened before. They go back to the Super Bowl 2 years later. They play Carolina. Same thing. Carolina ties it up. Patriots get the ball back, go down, kick a game-winning field goal as time expired. It had never happened before. They did it twice in 2 years. The following year, they go to Philadelphia, play against Philadelphia, rather, and that comes down to an interception by Rodney Harrison. Had he not done that, they might have gone and won that game. A few years later, they play the Giants. Moving right along. A little thing I like to call the Super Bowl that shall not be named. Still the worst thing that's ever happened in my sports life, honestly. And there aren't many things in my personal life that have equated to it. Honest to God, it just bothers me to know. True story, I was with Barstool back then, and we would throw these parties, about 5 or 6 of them a year, and this one right after that game. And first of all, that day, the next day after that Super Bowl, I kind of stopped writing for a while. I took my wife to see a movie because I didn't want to see that helmet catch again, right? You know what I'm talking about, like this impossible catch. Eli Manning heaves the ball up. A guy named David Tyree, who nobody had ever heard of, pins the thing to his helmet. If the bunch of us went out in the parking lot right now with a box of footballs and we tried to simulate that, we'd be here 3 years and we would never get it done. We'd finally just quit. This idiot got this thing stuck to his head, and it was ever. So a few days after that, I'm at a barstool party, and the theme was Mardi Gras. And earmuffs, young man. So they had models with painted on shirts. Not my idea, but that. So they had Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And me and a guy were sitting there nose to nose for 2 hours, just pouring our hearts out to each other. And he finally said, "You realize there's really attractive naked women walking around here?" I said, "Means nothing to me." It does mean I don't enjoy the taste of food. Beer is warm, my coffee is cold. My life is bereft of joy. So I would have enjoyed this any other time, but no, it means nothing to me. And then a couple years later, they go back to the Super Bowl. They play the Giants again. The Super Bowl that shall not be named, Part 2, the worst sequel since World War II, really. And again, same thing. Eli Manning gets out of the grass. He heaves a ball up. A guy this time named Mario Manningham, or Mayor Winningham. No, she was in St. Elmo's Fire. But yeah.
At least three you remember.
Yeah, exactly. And he comes down with the pass. Well, a few years after that, they go to the Super Bowl against Seattle. They're down by 10 in the fourth quarter. No team had ever come back from down that far. The Patriots take a lead. Brady throws 2 touchdown passes, and now Seattle needs a touchdown to win. Russell Wilson, again, in the grasp, escapes a tackle, throws up a ball, and a guy named Jermaine Kearse, if you remember this catch, it was Tyree, it was Manningham all over again. This one, he rolled on the ground, he kicked it with his knee, it went up in the air, it spun over, he hit it off his elbow, went in nostril, it came out one the other nostril, he rolled over 17 times and hauled it down, and he would have run into the end zone except an obscure, bottom of the roster, undrafted rookie from West Alabama named Malcolm Butler gets up and knocks him out of bounds. But they're right on the Patriots' doorstep. And my brother, by the way, turned to me, and this is where this gets really weird. It was in the same stadium, the same end of the same stadium where the David Tyree catch happened, really. And my brother turned to me, I'll never forget, and he said, "God hates us!" I said, "He does, he really does." Except that Butler makes, to me, the greatest single play in NFL history, making that interception on the goal line, which we found out later the Patriots had practiced that very play that week. They released the video with Malcolm Butler, that same alignment by Seattle. No team had thrown an interception on the other team's 1-yard line the entire season with 101 attempts or something. They did it on that play, and it just changed. Not only rebooted the Patriots dynasty, which had gone 10 years between wins, but killed the Seattle dynasty. There are 3 guys on that team left from that day. They've admitted it broke their will. It just completely crushed their soul by that miracle play. Well, 2 years later, Pats go back to the Super Bowl again. And this was the one, if you remember, they were down a lot. There was time. They could have maybe come back and won. I was in a fugue state the entire time. I remember I had guests over the house, and I just was sort of catatonic or whatever until Brady threw an interception and got returned for a touchdown, in which case I got on WebMD and found out that I was having what they called stroke-like symptoms. And they started coming back, and I did not come back. I just refused to even pump my fist. All my guests left. If anybody else had the same experience, I'm like, I don't blame you. Go right ahead. And the Pats scored a touchdown, and I was like, my wife's like, "That's good news, right?" I was like, couldn't really talk at that point. They got the 2-point conversion, which they needed. Then they got another touchdown. At that point, I was praying for the sweet release of death, as I recall. It went to overtime. There was a shaft of light above my couch, and my ancestors were calling me to come join them, and I was ready to. And only when they went down and scored a touchdown, so Atlanta never got the ball back, that I allow myself to have any friggin' emotion at all. But show of hands, did anyone think they were going to come back and win? Only this guy. Oh, God bless you. Bless you. Because my wife and my son were going, they could still come back. I'm like, no, this is just not possible. They were down 28-3, and Barstool started selling T-shirts that, the front, it says 28-3, and then on the back, it's the final score, which is 34-28, and those things. And if you remember, there was a guy at the 25th mile of the marathon holding up a sign that was just the scoreboard from that for all the tired runners, like, come on, you can make it. Tom Brady was down by 25 points and came back and won. Then following year, they go and they play Philadelphia. A game, okay, didn't work out, couple of plays here and there. Our quarterback dropped a pass, their quarterback caught a pass. It was an illegal formation. It should have been a penalty, but that's water under the bridge. But that game came down to one score, and it was a Hail Mary at the end that they almost came down with. But again, another razor-thin margin. And then they go and they play the Rams last year, the 11th highest scoring offense in league history, and the Patriots held them to a field goal. That has never happened in the history of football. So all this success, all this unprecedented winning in a league where everything is designed to stop you from being good for any length of time, right? Bad teams get the early draft picks. They get to have money to sign other people. The good teams don't. When you win, your players and your coaches want to get paid by other good teams, so they leave. They go for big money. The Patriots have sustained this excellence in a way that's impossible. And the way the rest of the league has responded to it is by talking about how unfair it is. Crying, belly aching, whining, and despising this team with the white-hot intensity of 1,000 pizza ovens. I've seen great teams in my life, and you just sort of said, oh, you know what? I root against them, but got to give them, hey, Los Angeles Lakers won a lot of titles, good for them. New York Yankees, boy, they have money to spend, I hate it. But you didn't sit there and say, they cheat. They're the cheatingest cheaters that ever cheated. There's no way that they can be this good. But that's what's happened to the Patriots. I can't even get into all the scandals. They're all in the book, but I'll just give you the broad strokes. The Tuck rule, the one that I mentioned, that somehow was an unfair break. That rule had been called repeatedly, but people pretend it had never been called. It went against the Patriots in the very game where Drew Bledsoe got hurt, but nobody cared about it. There was the Spygate. Does anyone tell me the short strokes of what Spygate actually was?
Yeah, they were videotaping from outside in the area they were supposed to be.
Absolutely, thank you.
5 feet away from where they were supposed to be.
Just, you ask anybody in the country what is Spygate, and they'll say, oh, Patriots were taping another team's practice. That was a phony report that was in the Herald that the Herald disowned. They put it on the front page, an apology. No one remembers that. They just go, oh yeah, no, they were taping practices. What they did, game 1 against the Jets, you're allowed to tape the other team's sidelines. There's a designated area where you can do it. It has to be covered. It has to be, you can only be here. They had a cameraman off over here. That was it. That thing was treated like the greatest scandal since Teapot Dome. Teapot Dome was a thing, right? I don't know. I forget history. And yet, it's never gone away. The Patriots lost a first-round draft pick for what really was like parking in the red zone. And that's where they became public enemy #1 to the entire world. There was a time against the Ravens. They had a game, it was the AFC Championship game. I'm talking 2011, where it was the Patriots were up by 3. Time was running out. They were in field goal range. Baltimore was. Baltimore's kicker was 60 yards up the field practicing instead of being ready to go on the field. By the time they signaled to him, he came running on the field and just shanked it. And the coach, John Harbaugh, blamed the Patriots. He said the scoreboard said that it was 3rd down, when in fact it was 4th down. They caught him off guard. He didn't know. Couple things about that, okay? First of all, you're a grown man. They're asking you to count to 4, okay? I mean, do I need a little vampire puppet to help you with this? 1 down, 2 downs, right? And besides, there's a man standing there in front of you with a giant orange 4 on the end of a stick, right? But he didn't know any better. And also, he had a timeout, but he just panicked in the moment and didn't think to call it. But he blamed the Patriots. The Patriots don't control the scoreboard. That's done by the league. And yet, no, that's more evidence of the Patriots cheating, like they hacked into it, like Russian bots or something, right? Well, then a couple years later, the Steelers come to town, and their helmet radios are picking up the signal of the Patriots radio broadcast. And they blame the Pats for that. Again, the league is in charge of the helmets. But this is small change compared to the biggie, Deflategate. You've heard of this. A story that basically could have been solved with middle school physics, right? You lose air pressure when it's cold. That's why in about 3 weeks, my phone is going to blow up with people tweeting me pictures of their dashboard where the check tire pressure light comes on, because it's simple. PV equals NRT. It's really simple. The league treated this as the biggest scandal since Spygate. And to the point where this thing wasn't just the biggest story in sports. It was the #1 story in America. For 2 weeks, it led the nightly newscasts. Like, you would put on, like, I don't know, ABC News, and instead of talking about the war on terror, or the economy, or the election, or whatever, it was like, good evening. Tonight, we examine, did the quarterback of a football team take a little bit of air out of some footballs? We're going to go live down to Foxborough with this. This thing went to federal court. It was one step away from the Supreme Court of the United States of America. The people who decided Brown versus the Board of Education almost had to hear Tom Brady versus some air pressure in some footballs. Now, to just tell you how bad the...
Slow down.
I appreciate it. No, it is so laughable. I'm with you.
Catch my breath.
Yeah, oh, thanks. You know, I'm sorry. This is like, you pulled a thread here when I get to talk about this. I'm like a nerd who wants to talk about the realm that I belong in. Yeah, I'm an 8th grade, 8th level wizard elf or whatever. It's so preposterous, and yet this is what happens when it's the Patriots. I call it Patriots derangement syndrome. And the country has moderate to severe cases of it, to the point where, okay, so earlier in that year, the Pats had a game at Green Bay. It was a Sunday night game. We're all watching it. At one point, the announcers tell this funny little anecdote, like, you know, Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the Packers, he told us that he likes to have the footballs a little overinflated, even a little bit above the legal limit, just hope the officials don't catch it. Ha, 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 everyone laughs, you move on. No one remembered it. Why? Because it wasn't important. Why was it not important? Because it wasn't the New England Patriots. It wasn't Tom Brady. And so, therefore, when it was a major scandal of epic proportions. People wanted the Patriots to not go to the Super Bowl because of that. They wanted them to send the Colts, who, by the way, they beat, like, the final score was 45-3 in that game, if I remember right. Yeah. After they took those footballs out of the game at halftime, the Patriots outscored them 35-0. But apparently it was all because all of Brady's... and by the way, the fallacy of this, I mean, I could go on and on. I won't. It's all in the book. But what supposedly started it was Brady threw an interception to a linebacker named DeQuell Jackson, who, according to legend, came to the sidelines and said, "Hey, fellas, does this ball feel a little squishy to you?" And they went, "What?" And they took the ball. "Hey, something's up with these footballs. Let's put a needle. Hey, something's going on here. Whoa, we're on to you." You know who was disowned that story? DeQuell Jackson. He was on Barstool Radio at the last Super Bowl going, "No, I kept the football because I intercepted Tom Brady." Like, you know what? I wanted to tell my grandkids, look, I intercepted Tom Brady. I had nothing to do with it. It was all a sting operation. The league set this up in order to go at the Patriots. Teams, they colluded on this. There was a league employee on the sidelines who said, "You guys are effed." Who, by the way, hates the Patriots going back to when he used to work for the Giants and doesn't like Belichick. I mean, it's all in the book. I won't get too much into it. But the world lost their minds. And in all of that, Brady got the ultimate revenge by winning 3 more Super Bowls while everyone was like screaming bloody murder about what a cheater he was. And by the way, the following year, they talked about how we're going to inspect these footballs. This is serious. This is the integrity of the games at stake here. We're going to measure these. We're going to release the figures. We're going to prove once and for all whether that happened. Anyone remember them ever bringing the topic up again? Right? Right. I know. It's like when I get upset at my wife about something and I turn out to be wrong, I drop that subject, which, by the way, is every time I get upset at my wife. One of these days I might be right. It's only been 26 years. I'm warming up to it. But no, the league never brought it up. And they said, oh, no, we were just keeping those for internal things. Like, I figured the balls would be brought out to the field in a Brinks truck surrounded by Swiss Army guards with, like, you know, machine guns. No, but this actually happened. Remember the whole part of that scandal about Patriots had an employee who took the footballs into the men's room on his way to the field. He was in there for 90 seconds. They timed his break. One of the football writers who believed the whole thing said to me, come on, what was that guy doing in the bathroom for 90 seconds? You tell me. I said, peeing? Maybe he washes his hands unlike you filthy bugger. I don't know. But anyway, so these things, that was the scandal. How dare these things be out of anybody's sight for even a minute? Well, the following year, there was a game at Gillette, and the officials got to the stadium, left their hotel in Boston, go down to the stadium, and they said, okay, let's grab the bag of footballs. The what? The bag of, I thought you had them. No, I thought you had them. They left them in their hotel room. I'm not making that up. They had to get the concierge into their room to get the footballs and have the state police bring them down to the stadium. That happened. And yet why? Because it's not important. That whole pressure gauge thing, and then I'll move off this subject, the whole thing about it has to be 12.5 to 14.5 pounds per square inch. You know where that rule comes from? The back of the box that a Wilson football comes in. They just said recommended air pressure. That's it. And yet this was all of a sudden bigger than the Constitution or whatever. So anyway, but yeah, and another way that they've reacted to this team is to try to change rules because the Patriots' excellence can't be stopped by any team. So you have to change the rule book. 2003, they beat the Colts in the playoffs and committed the unpardonable sin of making Peyton Manning look terrible. America's sweetheart, who cannot ever be that big thumb-headed goober. Like, how dare you stop his receivers and cover his guys? And I know everyone's supposed to love him. Oh, he sings that jingle in the commercials. I can't stand him. I really can't. But so they changed the rules. The Colts went to the league and got them to change the rules on how you can cover people because the Patriots is stopping them. They stopped them the following year, and Teddy Bruschi on an interview goes, yeah, you know what? You want to change the rules? Go ahead, change them. We'll just beat you anyway. Oh, it was brilliant. So a few years later, they beat the the Ravens in the playoffs where they had these formations that they had checked with the league that it's legal. They ran them by the officials before the game, and they said, yep, okay, that's cool. And they did it, and the Colts coach, John Harbaugh again, lost his mind. He had a complete nervous breakdown. He ran onto the field. He got a 15-yard penalty. At one point, the referee literally said to them, okay, don't cover number 34. Imagine, this was the official telling them how to play football. They covered 34 anyway, and they left 86 wide open, and he got balls for them. And so the following year, they made it so you can't do that anymore. There's 100 examples of this where they just say the Patriots do things we can't allow that to happen. The most recent of which is they beat the Chiefs in the championship game last year. They tied them, goes to overtime, Patriots win the coin flip, they go down the field, they score, game over, Patriots go to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs tried to get the league to make it so you can't just win the coin flip and score a touchdown, like both teams have to touch the ball. So now a coin flip is unfair. Like the thing that we use as a metaphor for something that is an even chance, they said, nope, unfair to the Patriots. Like what are they, Belichick now can control coins with his brain? Okay, I don't doubt it, but still. But anyway, and I'll wrap it up with this. What has the effect on all this that I'm talking about, between the winning and the scandals and how bad they used to be and how the world hates them and how they've gone from the one thing you can't be in this world, which is irrelevant, to so hyper-relevant that everything they do leads the network newscasts, is that I think it's galvanized us. you know, it's only natural that a fan base that wins as much as we have would just get kind of complacent. You know, what I call the Yankee fanification of Patriots fans. And I used to worry about it, but no, all this hatred has just made us more engaged than we ever would have been otherwise, you know. I think we are the most, like, motivated, energized, internet-savvy fan base in the world. Like, if anyone criticizes the Patriots, it's like the monkeys flying out of the witch's castle. Like, everyone comes and Jerry Rice was picked as the greatest football player of all time by the NFL Network. He said something about Brady taking the air out of football. He goes, that's cheating. I don't think everything, all his accomplishments are sketchy now, deserves an asterisk. I don't believe in him anymore. Patriots fans found an interview he had done where when he was winning championships and MVPs, he admitted to putting stickum, which is illegal, on his gloves. And they'll say, hey, Jerry Rice, what about this? I guess your Super Bowls don't mean anything. I guess your MVPs, right? Jerry Rice went off the grid like Jason Bourne. Like, he stopped tweeting, he stopped giving interviews for like 6 months. You didn't know if he was alive or dead, and it was a brilliant thing. And I feel like I've had a part in that. I love writing about it. I love clapping back at these people who go on like ESPN and accuse him of all this cheating, and Tom Brady's going to go off a cliff, he's going to be terrible any day now. And I think ultimately it's been a great thing. I mean, I talk to a lot of groups like yourself, and it's so much fun to be part of this, to be part of this journey, that if this was any other team, it might have ended 15 years ago. But they're still winning. They're still going. I'll see if I can get these numbers right. There are 4 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won 155 or more career games. Brady right now is 165 games above 500. He's won more games than he's lost by a factor more than all but 4 quarterbacks have ever won, period, in their lives. This is insane. Bill Belichick, who got fired in Cleveland, who was being burned in effigy in Cleveland like 20 years ago, is approaching the most wins by a coach of all time. And for my money, there's no end in sight. So it's been great. I admit maybe I care about it too much. I'll clean this story up for this room, but last year the Red Sox were in the playoffs, and they're facing Justin Verlander, who's pitching for the Astros, and my brother calls. And he goes, doesn't even say hello. I go, what's up? He goes, all right, here's the thing. You could be Brady, I'll clean this up, married to Gisele Bündchen, it's not the word he used, or you could be Justin Verlander with Kate Upton. Who would you rather be? And I said, out of those choices you gave me, I think I most want to be Giselle. It's like, dude, that is the creepiest thing I've ever heard. I'm not. That actually happened. And finally, and I'll end with this. When I wrote the first book, I was with EEI when it got published, and I got to interview Belichick, which was, talk about like your spirit animal, right? I was terrified about meeting him because I was like a 4-year-old meeting the mall Santa. Like, I don't know if I'm going to freeze up or if I'm going to cry or if I'm going to wet myself or whatever. And he was great to me. And this one particular day when I had the book, my wife said, bring him a copy and give it to him. I go, well, what if he doesn't want it? What if it's awkward? She goes, just try it. So that day, he wasn't really feeling it. I don't know if you know this, but he's got a reputation of being a little bit of a fussy pants sometimes, a little cranky. Yeah, on this day he came in, maybe a bad day of practice, but he was being a little persnickety. And when he was done, I just said, hey, Bill, if you want, look, I got a book. I wrote it. You're in it. So, yeah, spoiler alert, you win. And and his whole demeanor changed. It was great. He like, oh, my, hey, this is great. Congratulations. That's good for you. It's a great accomplishment. I said, thank you. Take it with my compliments. You go, great. And he left, and a full minute went by, and he came walking in, and he said, hey, Jerry, can I bother you to sign this for me? I was like, Jazz hands, what? He goes, I got to run off to do the press thing. I'm late. If you could sign it and bring it back next week, I'd appreciate it. I go, okay, great, sure. And it's a good thing because my hand was like this. Like, it would have just been, like. So I gave it to him on the air the next week, and it said, "Dear Coach, thank you for saving my football team, Jerry." And he's like, "Thank you very much." So I would take a bullet for that man, like flat out, like just Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard. I would just carry him out. So I will always love you. But he's great. Anyway, no, I said I would keep this brief, and I've done the furthest thing from that because it's fun, and you guys had such great reactions. It's been a joy. But now I want to hear from you guys. My name is Jerry Thornton. Thanks very much. And raise your hand if you got anything, any complaints. Right there, my friend.
I enjoy looking at the state-by-state maps before Super Bowl, which team each state is rooting for. And for the last Patriots one, there were 5 states rooting for the Patriots and 45 rooting for
the Rams, yeah. The Rams, who have a fan base that's half the size of this room. Like, nobody in L.A. cares about them. They just, right.
One of those states was North Dakota, so there were 2 New England states that weren't even rooting for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, Connecticut and Vermont.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. And I've vacationed a few times up in Lake Champlain, and it's weirdly like New York, Yankee country, whatever. Connecticut, I haven't figured out. Don't know what their glitch is, but I think it's like, I'm trying to figure out where the line is, the demilitarized zone. Maybe it's like Route 89, like there's like, because on that other side, it's all Giants country. And, and here's the thing, like, I have this special lifelong hatred for the Giants, and it's because before the Patriots were in, a team, this was Giants territory. So that's why to this day, anytime the Patriots aren't on, we're forced to see a Giants game, and so I've always despised them. They say like, kids aren't born hating. They have to be taught how to hate. No, I hated them in the amniotic sac. I'm telling you right now. In the thought that the Pats were gonna leave. One day it was announced the Patriots are leaving, they're moving to St. Louis. That very day, the team was bought by an obscure cardboard box manufacturer by the name of Robert Kraft. And it went from the worst day of my life as a sports fan to the greatest day, because I've got 2 sons. And the thought that I would have raised them to be Eli Manning fans just haunts my dream. Like, that's an alternate reality I don't want to imagine. They're cute little faces with that number 10 thing. Oh, I'm the runt of the litter. So yeah, I don't get, but the rest of the world hates. Like, it's to the point where the Patriots could be playing a team from Russia, and the rest of America would root for the Russians. You know what I mean? It's like the opposite of Rocky IV. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're next. But no, yes.
Explain the loophole that Belichick took advantage of in the game last week.
Oh, isn't that great? Yeah. That whole thing where, and you saw him like laughing on this. Oh yeah, like ear to ear.
Never seen
because
that.
it was a punt, and they were up by 33 points or whatever. He goes to punt it, but it's, the ball's probably going to go in the end zone anyway and come 20 yards out. So you just want to, take a penalty, move back a little bit, let his punter boom it, maybe pin them inside the 5 or the 10, and run some time off the clock. Well, so they do a delay of game penalty, the clock runs down. The other penalty, the other coach declines it. So they line back up again, and they start running the clock down, and he has Brandon Bolden jump. Okay, illegal motion by the offense. Penalty. The other coach declines it. And so Belichick was like, I'll do this all day. I'll just keep on doing it. And so you're not allowed to do that technically, but he had read a rule that had a loophole where he managed to burn a minute off the clock when he was just trying to get the game over in a way that the rule book is available to every other team, and 31 other coaches, it never dawned on him to do that, and that's what he did. And I trust me. And he even said, yeah, I'm sure they're going to close that loophole this year. Like, I'm surprised they're not doing emergency sessions right now, because God forbid you win a Super Bowl doing that. And I'm sure they're all just, and this is the thing, and they all pretend to hate him. But every one of his assistant coaches gets hired to be a head coach somewhere else. It's incredible. Now they're going to hire his GM, and he's going to probably go to, what team is going to hire?
Houston.
Yeah, Houston. Trust me, as much as they pretend to hate him, one of these days, the Jets are going to announce the new head coach. Half-eaten sandwich we fished out of Bill Belichick's trash. Here we go. Come and say hello to everybody. Bill Belichick's dog, everyone. He's our new general manager. Yes, you had it.
Does Bill really want to win a Super Bowl without Brady?
I think he just wants to win one. And I hear this theory a lot. I don't get the logic of it. Like, if he wins a Super Bowl without Brady, the trophy looks exactly like if he wins one with him. Like, there's no discernible difference. It only won't have a dent in it. Thanks, Gronk. But yeah, and I hear that, and you get a lot of people who are fixated weirdly on how's it going to end? Is Brady going to be gone? Personally, I think Brady's going to continue to play till he's 45. I think, we've all seen this thing with really successful people. When they exceed all their dreams, it has a strange effect on people, right? I mean, you see like celebrities that either join religions or take up kind of weirdo belief systems sometimes, or God forbid, get into drugs or whatever. I think his way of dealing with it is this thing, this TB12 method. I think he believes that he's onto something, that he's changing the way human physiology and athletic performance works, and he wants to prove that he can do something no one's ever done, which is play till he's 45. And I got friends who were saying, oh, he's done, they got to get rid of him like 10 years ago. Like, okay, guys, you want to own that? I just say keep on going. I don't worry about the end. I'm really zen about this. Like, someday we're all going to live in a world where Tom Brady is not the quarterback of the Patriots. I don't want to give that sadness one extra day. Like, I will root for the meteor to wipe us all out rather than live in that day. Well, but I actually think he's going to evolve into pure energy and then inhabit another quarterback's body, and we'll just draft that guy. Yeah.
Do you think Brady would have been as good if he didn't have Bill?
Definitely not. And I would say the opposite is true too, because Brady, and it's one of the underrated parts of what he's accomplished, is that he has played for less money than he could have throughout his whole career. And you look at all these other guys that max out, like Aaron Rodgers maxes out. So it's a zero-sum game. You can only pay so much money to your team on a whole. And so Brady takes less money so that he can have other good players around him. And that's a huge part. But also, and this is big, he allows himself to be, I don't know, subjugated is the wrong word, but I mean, just to be treated like just another player, and you hear all these stories of guys say, I'm there, I'm a rookie, I was drafted in the 5th round, I'm sitting in a meeting room, and there's Belichick going, look at this throw from Brady. I mean, like, I could get, the quarterback of Foxborough High School to make that throw. And Brady just sits there and takes it, and you go, how can I have an ego when he's like stomping this guy who's the best that's ever been? And so that's the thing. The two of them have work together, and they're different sorts of cats, and I scarcely doubt that at the end of the night they're on FaceTime like going, no, you hang up first, no, you hang up, okay. They're not cuddling on the sofa having This Is Us watch parties, but they know that they couldn't have anybody better to work with than the other guy, and the fact they've kept it together for 20 years, that's
I'd
just...
hate to see him go to another team and fail.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't, or succeed, or go to another team. Yes, Darren, in the back.
If the Patriots have a perfect season this year and win the Super Bowl, because they had a perfect season one year
Yeah.
and didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember that.
If they have a perfect season
Yeah. Still,
and win the Super Bowl, would that be the perfect time for Tom to go out on top?
I guess, but no, what if he comes back and wins like another one, Last year they won 11-5, and I get it. I get the temptation, and everyone has this, it's kind of preternatural fear of it ending badly, you know what I mean? Like we've seen athletes that just were stumbling around, and it just, you just end up feeling sad for them. And gosh, I mean, I'm just so many examples. I mean, historic, like Johnny Unitas finished his career with like the San Diego Chargers or whatever, and Michael Jordan with the Washington Wizards or whatever. Yeah, but you know what? I think Brady is 100% right when honest when he says, "What's my next favorite ring? The next one." And I think if he wins number 7, he's going to want to win number 8. And, and maybe I ought to just skip ahead and write 8 rings right now, or just at least have it ready, or at least have like a changeable cover. I don't know. But yeah, it would be amazing. Interestingly enough, there's a special coming out with Belichick and Nick Saban, who's the head coach of the University of Alabama, and they're old colleagues, and they're like best buddies, and two guys with the same brain. And in the interview that we've seen in the previews, Belichick says, looking back in that 2007 season, it probably would have helped if we had lost a game somewhere along the way. And you go, yeah, imagine if they were 18-1, but that one was in like November instead of February. By the way, the Giants had 2 good months in a span of 9 years. 2 good months, and both of them cost us rings. That thought haunts my every waking step. And I have friends that are Giants fans who remind me of that all the time, and I just, God, it's horrible. They're the bane of my existence. Yes, hi.
I just find that his personality, Belichick, and how the team members behave themselves or stay in line as well as they do, in their reporting and when they are interviewed, and that team, it just seems like none of the other teams behave in that manner, and I'm not quite sure how he manages that.
Yeah, and they're all trying to figure that out. You're absolutely right. But it's a culture, and I think he gets the players to buy into it, and certainly Brady sets the tone. But if you look to, and one of my favorite things to do is to try to discern who they're going to draft. And it's hard. And it's a lot of it's luck, and not much of it is science. But when I'm scouting out the draft, I look for guys who are captains on their team. And I think what he likes to do is lean towards those kind of guys that, have a brain in their head and that kind of innate leadership quality like Matthew Slater has, like Devin McCourty has. And so he fills the locker room with leaders, and then these kind of super leaders emerge out of them. And so it's a little hard to be that guy who wants to stand out and make it about you and count your stats or whatever, because you're going to be marginalized in a locker room full of guys who don't care about that. And we got a recent example. I mean, they just traded Michael Bennett. Right. Michael Bennett was brought in here. He's been a star in the league for a long time. I was nervous about them bringing him in. I was not buying into this. He's talented, but one of those guys who's about himself first. He got suspended last week because he mouthed off to his coach because he wasn't playing much. Okay, you're not playing much. You're on the greatest defense this team has ever had. They're doing something right. And if you're worried about your how many downs you play, then you don't fit in here. So they just traded him. They traded him for like a bag of used footballs. Like they had nothing for him. Just fine. We'll go. So we'll win without you. And I would be like, dude, just keep quiet. You're getting full-time pay for a part-time job. You're on a great team. Just enjoy the fact you don't have to wash a uniform at the end of the game. You just spray some Febreze on it, hang it back up, and just go home, whatever. And so that's the thing. There's many examples where if a guy's out of line, they just, well, we've won without you. We'll win, we'll win after you're gone. And I love the guys who haven't won somewhere else and come to the Patriots and say, I don't care how much I make. Chris Long was a star in this league. And a few years ago, he'd been with the Rams. He had never been to the playoffs. He gave an interview. He says, I told my agent, I don't care if I play for $5. Get me to New England. And he did, and he won a Super Bowl here. And then beat us in the next Super Bowl. But the point is, you can't have it all. But anyway, yeah, so it's great.
Change in Jamie Collins.
Jamie Collins, unbelievable, yeah. Again, they traded him in the middle of a season for what they would have gotten if they just let him walk at the end of the season. And he goes to Cleveland, and he goes 0-16, and then comes back to New England, and he's a superstar. Like he's, oh my God, it's like Shakespearean sea change. These guys go off, was it Laertes, like goes off to, yeah, and he comes back. Am I getting the right? Okay, I'm close. Okay. And it was like, it's been miraculous. Pat Chung, same thing. I did not want him back. I was like, no, not Pat Chung, and he came back, and he has been like among their best players. So I think these guys, it's kind of like, maybe they don't get to have as much fun, and maybe they don't get to do end zone dances the way they do other places or whatever, but then they go somewhere in this losing culture. Because I've talked to NFL players who say, you can have the most fun coach in the world. You can be playing great. If your team loses, there is zero chance you're enjoying your career. It's miserable being among that. And Patriots don't know what that feels like. So there you go. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I really enjoyed reading your first book. because we lived every moment of those early Patriots. From listening to them on the radio from the very first game on, I was always really interested in them. They weren't my number one team, but I was always very interested. And I really enjoyed your depiction of the time they took him to the motel with the swimming pool.
Oh, right.
And they were having a synchronized swimming exhibition in the pool, and you had two. First you had, I can't remember, Larry Eisenhower.
It was Larry Eisenhower's a guy that they called him the Wild Man, which I found out later in life that was my dad's favorite player. I'm like, he was like proto Gronkowski. You know, he was like this crazed, like, you know, hilarious, profane guy. And they were at a hotel where there's a giant water tank behind the bar, and they had a mermaid show. Like women doing synchronized swimming in costumes or whatever. And so Eisenhower's there with his dad, who was like this middle-aged, like, fat man, and just says, hey, Dad, come on, they're going to let us use the pool in a little bit. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, okay. And so while everyone's sitting at the bar and these women are doing a show, these two gigantic men went diving into the middle of it while, like, you know, nose plugs are flying everywhere and everyone's screaming and stuff. They go, hey, why was everybody looking at us? I don't know, Dad. You know, I love that. I love that. Real quick, my favorite Larry Eisenhower story was, remember Rex Trailer? Yep. Okay. Rex Trailer, in his early days, had this sidekick, this kind of offensive Mexican stereotype named Pablo, who was like, you know, with a sombrero, and he always wanted to take siestas. I mean, just really horrible, crazy stuff. Well, they thought it would be funny to send Pablo down to Patriots training camp, and they came up with this bit, like, okay, he'll run the football, and all the defenders will, like, miss him, and it'll be really funny. Okay, sure, it's a kid's show, it'll be great. And he did, and he ran through like 10 guys who all fake tackled him and kept missing, except one. Larry Eisenhower just went up and bang and hit him and knocked him on the ground. No one scores on my team. Those are the days. By the way, when I was a kid at Weymouth, they did a thing at the air base, and tell me how the world has changed. Rex Trailer did an exhibition with like ropes and stuff and lariats, and he brought up my next door neighbor, who was 9 years old, and he put a cigarette in his mouth and he cracked it out with a bullwhip. Imagine living in that world. Like, it was like, look at that, the cigarette in the kid's mouth. Yeah, Sammy's probably in an iron lung today, but you know what? And I should mention this because it's early in the book. This is the way how the Patriots have been so good for so long. If you look at those early film clips on YouTube of the early Super Bowls, it's not like in high def, right? It's in that analog, that 4:3 ratio instead of the screen that we're all used to. So a friend of mine sent me a tape of, after they won the first Super Bowl, Adam Vinatieri was a household name. He goes on Letterman, and he's sitting there, he's doing the interview, and Letterman brings him up on the roof, and he has him in downtown Manhattan on the roof, kicking footballs onto the parking garage across the street.
I saw that.
And just to tell you how the world has changed since then, waiting on the other roof, walking around in a suit and tie and an overcoat, was a Manhattan businessman named Donald Trump. Imagine if you could go back to 2002 and tell yourself, you see these three guys? You know? Yeah. Vinatieri will still be playing in 2019, and Letterman will be on this thing called Netflix. And the other guy, you know, he'll have a TV show for a while, and then he'll do some other stuff. Oh, how the world has changed. Yes, sir.
Do you have any more info into the story than we know about Chandler going hoopy in the Foxborough Police parking lot?
Yeah, as well as I can tell. Chandler Jones was his 2015, I want to say. They're in the playoffs. They have a week off. And Sunday morning, one of their best players, a first-round draft pick, defensive end Chandler Jones, is shirtless on a 30-degree day at the Foxborough Police Station asking for help. And as best as we can figure, he took a little something on the street they call spice. It's basically incense that people smoke. Like, as a friend of mine who's a firefighter says, oh, we do calls for this all the time. Yes, you can ingest it. You can also ingest Drano. It doesn't mean you're supposed to. Like, it's legal for them to sell it in gas stations because you're not, it says right on it, do not consume, but that's why people do it. And he had a bad reaction to it. So, and was traded not long thereafter. And he's, you know, making a ton of money out in Arizona, but You know, they've won Super Bowls without him. Little tough to tell your coach, yeah, well, we had the week off, so I thought I'd take the drug equivalent of ingesting Drano. He's a good guy. I know someone whose daughter has met him out there and says he's a really good guy. I interviewed him a few times. He was okay, but you don't want to be doing that. Just say no, kids. Just say no. I'm going to a brewery, but that's legal. I'm gonna do that in a few minutes. But anyway.
I got a comment.
Sure.
I always thought the most important thing that Bill, the coach, ever said was, do your job. He had a very specific job for each player, and if you do your job, you will win. And I thought that was,
That's it.
was the key to everything.
That's it. And it's not about being super athletic necessarily. They've had guys who were super athletic that didn't pan out, but then they've replaced them with guys who just what you said, who say, okay, here's your responsibility, take care of this, and we'll make sure that everybody around you is doing it, and it becomes this, you know, it's a machine with all the gears, and they all have to fit into place, and you don't have to be the biggest, fastest gear in the world. You just have to mesh in with all the others. And I mean, Jamie Collins, the first time he was here, was notorious for freelance, and they got rid of him. They replaced him with Kyle Van Noy, who's been a godsend. It wasn't much to speak of in Detroit, but you watch him game in and game out, and he's making incredible plays, and you just go, there's a guy who's living by that mantra, do your job, you know. Well, you guys have been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Go Pats. I will love to come back here, or I just got to start another book. So if anyone has any ideas, I would love that. Thank you. Yeah, why don't I do that? Thank you very much. Love this town. I don't have it would have been nice if I brought something to write with.